Coogs house. We do not have to wait a week to play basketball games always. We got a basketball game tonight, Tuesday night against Troy. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs Daily Podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. I appreciate making us first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. If you want to join the conversation but don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below. Like hot or cold sandwiches. Not what you like in the middle of them. Our favorite filling is. Do you like them, generally speaking, hot or cold? Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. More on that fun later. We got a little bit of a bonus feeling kind of episode here today as we talk about Houston Cougars, number, 15 in the country at this point, after the new AP poll, taking on the Troy Trojans. Creative name, I know. And I want to stress that Troy, even though they do sit at 5-3, and they've lost games to Arkansas, Oregon, and Merrimack, that they are not necessarily your traditional Sun Belt team in a lot of ways. They have a lot of athleticism. They really attack hard off the bounce, off the dribble. And I do feel like they offer interesting ways for Houston to get better. I was really, really impressed by a lot of things by them. I think one thing that's impressive about them that you'll probably hear a lot about over the course of the game is they returned 12 players. You heard that correctly. In modern NIL portal era college basketball, a Sun Belt team brought back 12 players. That's bonkers. That's ridiculous. It's just not something you see typically happen, right? And so that's what they did. That's what they got going on. A lot of guys move on a string. They kind of all have that synchronicity together where they've played together for over a year at this point, right? It's really, really interesting to see how that plays out. And I bet by February, they played a couple years together at that point. That's going to be a really, really big tool in what they do. I think their best player is their point guard, Tayton Conerway. He is 6'3", $186 on their stat sheet here. And he is not a great shooter from behind the arc, but I get 10 points and 5 assists per game by attacking. He puts pressure on the rim, pressure on the paint, loves to get what coaches call paint touches. You get feet in the lane before ultimately scoring or kicking it out, dropping it off to a big, whatever the case may be, right? At 6'3" and a point guard, I bet he gets Milos Uzan. And the big deal for me there, work with me here, is that Milos has had foul trouble problems, bluntly, right? Like he's had issues being out of foul trouble, covering point guards, covering guys that attack the rim, etc. This offers an interesting test from Milos, right? This guy's going to put a lot of pressure on the rim. Can you attack him defensively without fouling him? Can you keep him from doing what he wants to do without fouling him? Can you keep, hands out of the cookie jar, so to speak? Can you beat him to the spot instead of riding to the spot? Those kinds of things. Now, I think Milos can, but the interesting thing about this is a chance for him to work on it. That's why Sampson always talks about how his schedule is so intentional. You find those kinds of things in these teams. Their leading scorer is a 6'5" forward/guard, actually from Irving, and his name is Miles Rigsby. 6'5", 14 points per game. Not the greatest three-point shooter, but a big-time scorer. Again, 6'5". They list him at 190 pounds. I also saw one place that lists him at 6'6". Bigger guy, uses his size in the lane well. Because Emmanuel Sharp is a little bit broader than LJ Cryer, I think that this is the Emmanuel Sharp matchup. I think that Emmanuel is going to win that matchup. I understand it's kind of, you don't want to get too far ahead of yourself with these kind of things, but I think he'll win that matchup. I also, for what it's worth, think that Miles Rigby is going to get frustrated with Emmanuel because Emmanuel kind of does cheeky things, the taking the charges, the pulling the chair out, those kinds of things defensively that I think are kind of counterbalance on what Miles Rigsby wants to do. Other starter I think you got to keep an eye on is his brother, Miles Rigsby's brother, Marcus Rigsby, the older brother, is a much more traditional 3 and D kind of kid. He's a 6'3" guard, um, as opposed to 6'6" like the younger brother, 6'5" like the younger brother, but big time 3 and D. I mean, 38% from 3 and D kind of kid. Um, I'm thinking this is LJ Cryer. He's a little bit bigger than Cryer is. He likes to hang out outside the arc, so I don't think the size will be quite as big an advantage. Um, I also, for whatever worth, in my own head, always put shooters on shooters. I don't know what that coaching philosophy is that I just innately kind of lean into, but if a guy's going to be running around, running off screens and stuff like that for shots, I think a shooter kind of anticipates that pretty well, typically. That's not to say that Marcus Rigsby can't shoot off the dribble. He actually shoots very well off the dribble, it looks like. I saw the Arkansas game, saw some highlights online, and then read their stats. Marcus is a very, very good shooter. So, going to have to kind of rely on the veteran leadership of one LJ Cryer there. The bigs, I think Houston's going to be fine with no matter whether they start JoJo Tugler or Javier Francis at the 5. I bet they go with Tugler again. What is it? 72-hour turnaround. How much could have really changed? And their technical center, I guess, technically, is Thomas Dowd, 6'8", 225. Tugler's going to eat him alive. Right? Tugler's going to eat him alive. The kid does not have the kind of motor to keep up with Tugler, but that Tugler aggression could lead to foul trouble, right? And I will say for what it's worth, that Dowd is clever, crafty, other adjective you want to say. The kind of guy is going to feast on free throws, right? And so that could be where Troy finds some sort of an advantage down low with that one. And then the other big for Troy is Jackson Fields, a guy that I think that Jawan Roberts ought to dominate at the power forward spot. Jackson Fields is not a 3-point shooter. He's not even necessarily a particularly efficient 2-point shooter, given where he's shooting his shots from. He's the beneficiary of a lot of drop offs, a lot of lobs, and that kind of stuff. An energy guy, a lot like Jawan is for Houston. Again, maybe I'm matching up personality types here more than anything, but I think that that's going to be important for the Cougs to kind of have a spot where Jawan can float, get extra rebounds, cut off penetration, get block shots, that kind of stuff. I like to have him in that spot when he can. And so I think that, like I said, this is a game Houston should win. It's Troy. Kim Palm's got them at 120th in the country, right? They've got Houston at 5th presently. That shouldn't be particularly close. When you look at things that they can work on in this game, I guess they do play a little bit. Troy plays a little bit faster pace than Houston does. Not a lot faster, but a little bit faster. And then Troy's going to really attack you in the lane. And I mentioned that with several players, but even when you get down into their bench, I really like off their bench a big guy. Victor Valdez is listed at 6'7". Yeah, 6'7", 240. Big guy, but also like shoots threes really well. Big guy, originally from Mexico, went to high school at an academy in Spain, and has a lot of that perimeter big guy kind of stuff, but has a gigantic body, awkward matchup if he wants to ever go bang it down low. Um, all of that is to say that if Houston's going to get better at defending without fouling, this will be the game that you put yourself to the test. And it's not that they're in danger of dropping this one. I think that'd be catastrophically bad. But I do think it's the kind of game where you'll see Houston get tested. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to attack the paint and really force Houston to kind of, you know, test that depth, to work through things, to defend without fouling, to keep people out of the lane. And it's not that they're as fast as an Auburn was or as fast as Kansas State or Kansas will be, but they are, for what it's worth, going to try to exploit things that you already need to be working on. And I think that's important for Houston across the board. I want to talk some in a second about what are the things Houston can be working on in this game. Before we get too far, I do want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel's got this great deal right now. We put down $5, and then the bet hits, you get $150 back in bonus bets in your account. So the FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you all the great things in the middle of the NFL game. Check the latest stats, play-by-play, and so much more, all right there on the same page. So visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Programs with Locked On Coogs previewing Houston and Troy. Now, we will be live after the game. The tip-off is about middle of a game I'm coaching in, so we'll be catching up some, and it might not be right after the game if I don't finish it right on time. But we will be talking some afterwards about how this one went and what we took out of it. And one thing I'm looking for going into it is the continued evolution of rotations, right? I've talked before about how Sampson kind of brings freshmen along, and if he needs them, if he knows he's going to need them this season, you start to see their minutes ramp up as you get closer to conference play in January and February, right? So, do you see that Mercy Miller? Does he go from 5 to 8 minutes this game? We'll see. Do you see JoJo Tugler start again? We mentioned that we go through the lineups earlier, but does JoJo Tugler get the start? What does Francis look like off of the bench? Right, that's a big deal to me. I'm looking to see what Ramon Walker does. He played a lot of minutes in the last game against Butler. Is he kind of your fix here? The minutes he took, those are Malik Wilson's minutes. Do you even that out in this game? If so, what do those lineups look like? I dance around all of those things. My favorite guy right now on the team to watch play basketball, and I should say one of my favorite. I really like watching JoJo actually too. One of my two favorite guys on the team to watch play basketball right now is Terrance Arceneaux, and what Terrance Arceneaux does off of um, off of 72 hours rest. They just played Saturday night, right? And it's a game that they should win and all those kind of things. But do you kind of let him push that minutes limit again, right? As you're continuing to get him back into game shape. You're just over an hour, just over a year post a Achilles tear, right? So you don't want to push it too much, but you also kind of need to start to figure out what you're going to get out of him when you start Big 12 play at the end of the month, right? Now, Terrance is the secret weapon to this team in a lot of ways, right? They played Auburn and Alabama, two top 5 teams in the country, down to the wire with him on a minutes restriction. Now, they won't call it that, but that's kind of what it functioned as, right? And so as you get into Big 12 play, you unleash this weapon, right, where Terrance can guard 1 through 5 for a lot of teams, at least 1 through 4. He can play offense against anyone. He's long. He can body up with big guys. He's quick and shifty, shoots over the top of guards. I mean, he really is a incredibly versatile player. And for my money, I think he's a pro very quickly because of that. Even if he's coming off the bench for Houston, which I understand the Achilles tear. It's just baffling to me. Anyway, I see Terrance as an important part of this. Does Terrance get closer to 27, 28 minutes, even if you're blowing him out, just to see how his body reacts? And by that, I mean what a coach will do. He'll talk to the AT, John Houston, the trainer, and they'll have a plan. And so anticipate you're going to be up by a lot in the second half of this game. And it's okay. Well, we're going to push Terrance to 28 minutes. And then the plan comes into play with this post game recovery immediately after, and then the recovery on Wednesday, right? What does his body react like? How does his body snap back to it? How sore is he? Can he, where's the pain lingering? Those kinds of things, right? That's where all that comes into play. And that's the kind of thing we're not going to hear a lot about. They keep a lot of that kind of stuff hush hush. We don't hear about injuries till right before they go to tip off, frankly, a lot of times when they happen with Houston because they don't want anybody to know about stuff they don't have to know about. But also, we'll see it kind of play out in the next game when Houston lines up again. What is it? It's next week against Toledo. Yeah, a week. It's almost a week from Tuesday. It's Wednesday, so it's like 8 days, right? God, I can't do math, but calendars, math, sure. But all that is to say that if they play him more minutes against Toledo with A&M Corpus Christi the following Saturday, okay, maybe that worked. Maybe that did pretty well. If He plays 28 minutes against Troy and then 20 minutes against Toledo. Okay, maybe it didn't work. Maybe they want to pull his minutes back, right? That's what you got to kind of watch as a pattern here. And that's what I'm going to be looking for in Terrance because we know he can dominate on the floor. He can put the ball on the floor against anybody. He can get by a lot of people, shoot at the top of people. And again, he can bang down low with people if he needs to. He can do all the things as long as he's healthy enough to play. And so you got to kind of monitor what those minutes look like. You do have Oklahoma State at the end of the month to open up Big 12 play on the road, and that's a tough place to play. I would imagine that BYU coming to you, uh, Kansas State, these things get to be a little bit more difficult very quickly there, though. So you kind of have to spend the rest of December figuring out what you got. And we have another chance to do that on Tuesday night with Troy. I'm going to be watching the best I can live. Again, I'll be starting a little bit later, but I'm excited to talk with you about it afterwards at Locked On Coogs. So find us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you know when we are live. Talk about all things Houston Cougars. Got transfer portal news too throughout the week. Eventually, we're going to have a defense coordinator. All kinds of fun over at Locked On Coogs. So again, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know we're live. Locked On Coogs, primary for Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Coogs.